people who have been in the sex industry develop PTSD, and in many, like me, walk away with complex PTSD. Complex PTSD isn't just flashbacks, it's emotional numbness, it's disassociation, it's mistrusting good things, it's looking at a calm, healthy life and thinking, I don't belong there. Everyone thinks that they'd run, they'd escape the fire if they were in the same situation, walk out of the room and leave just fine. But if you've ever stayed in a relationship too long, if you've ever stayed in a job that drained your soul, if you ever kept a secret that made you sick, then maybe you're not so different after all. The only real difference is some of us are judged for our survival and others are praised for theirs. Most people don't realize by the time many of us entered into this type of life, our brains weren't even done cooking. You ever try to build a house on a half-dried cement? It's not going to work. That's what trauma does to a brain still under construction. Okay? The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that controls impulse, it controls the decision making, risk assessment, doesn't finish developing till we're 25, and most people in the industry get in it like at 18. So what happens when you introduce trauma into a brain that's not finished forming? You don't just shift a person's behavior, you shape their entire perception of reality.
All in these boxes now, and you're right, we are that fear
Yes.
that I didn't have maybe 15 years ago. If I meet somebody who's from a minority background, or
Exactly.
what if I say the wrong thing?
Exactly. Notice how in everything you're saying there, you have to be in this divisive category. It's the same in schools where the children are put in these categories. Nobody means to, but they have the LGBT group that the kids can join. They have the Black Caribbean kid group that the kids can join. And of course, it's only the Black Caribbean kids that go to that group. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at the playground, nobody is friends across religious and racial divides, and sexual divides, this is crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Children ought to be friends with each other, whoever they are. Like, that's the whole point. That's what school's meant to do. It's meant to socialize you and make you feel like anyone can be your friend. And I just, the new way of doing things, like
caring for their baby dolls and instead begin to destroy them, it all goes with everything else in the film. Play has a purpose. It prepares children for adulthood. Young animals engage in play based on their behaviors that they'll need as adults. So it's not an accident that girls by nature have always played with baby dolls. It's preparation for motherhood. So what does it mean to have a movie aimed at children where the girls who turn from caring for and nurturing their dolls, they begin destroying and smashing their dolls? If caring for a baby doll corresponds to the caring of a baby, then what does the smashing of a baby doll correspond to? It corresponds to the destruction of babies. It's no accident that the same generation that turned against marriage and motherhood pioneered the killing of over 60 million babies in abortion. It was only about 10 years after Barbie came on the scene that abortion on demand began in America. In the opening of 2001, the apes that have been lifted up by the monolith end up using bones to beat enemy apes to death. A kind of chilling scene. But the opening of Barbie is even more chilling because it represents the smashing not of an enemy, but of one's own baby. What do you think that seed that was planted in the minds of girls who watched that scene in that movie will give birth to? Will they be more likely or less likely to value motherhood and babies? More or less likely to have abortions? And that goes back to Ishtar. Ishtar, in her Phoenician incarnation, or Astarte, in the Bible as Ashtoreth, was also linked to the smashing of babies, to child sacrifice. In fact, some believe that her cult of prostitution helped supply the cult of child sacrifice. And this goes back to something I revealed in the Return of the Gods, that the ancient spirits are first identified in the Bible as the Shedim in Hebrew. Behind the gods were the Shedim, means spirits, as in Ishtar. But the word Shedim in Hebrew is linked to the word for destruction. The Shedim, the gods, the spirits, were the destroyers. Their aim is to destroy, and their strategy is to cause individuals or societies to destroy themselves. And the way they do it is to remove purpose. Men from manhood, women from womanhood, marriage from marriage, boys from boyhood, girls from girlhood, children from childhood, and mothers from motherhood. The scripture says we war not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities. And this is part of it. Don't be blind to what is taking place. And if the propaganda or attack is sugar-coated, that doesn't make it any less dangerous.
Right, that's what we need to understand. And it's the same when it comes to anything else. All of these divisions are not helpful, and in particular for children, because then they grow up that way. And we as adults ought to understand our duty, and there comes the small c conservative value. We have a duty and a role to play when it comes to raising children, both as teachers and as parents. We're not meant to make excuses for them. We're meant to take the hard road and to hold our standards high and to expect them to meet those standards. So people call me the strictest headmistress in Britain, which is a bit of a silly name. But if you type into Google, who is the strictest teacher in the world, my name will come up.
Yeah. It was PR, isn't it? It works.
Well, I don't know. I think it's the Sunday Times that once named me that.
World's
And then
strictest.
that's how, that's what I've become. But
how strict are you? Are you kicking off at them? Are you shouting? Are people?
I mean, the thing is that people imagine that strictness means you're marching up and down the corridors with whips and chains and that you hate children. I get to school at 6:45 every morning. I clearly don't hate children. I love them. And I love the children so much that we hold our standards high for them. Strictness is love, as far as I'm concerned. It's much easier not to give the detention. It's much easier just to be friends with the kids, which is why adults do it. They don't give them the detention, or they don't tell them off as the parent, because it's easier to just push it under the carpet. And then they don't see over time how that builds up all kinds of trouble for you later on in life. And that when they're 14 and they turn around and tell you to F off and they want to listen to you, you think, oh my goodness, what do I do now? But it's too late. What you needed to do from when they were tiny was teach them that you are the adult in authority and that the buck stops with you. And that doesn't just mean that you tell them off. It means that you praise them. It means that you spend time with them. You bond with them. You get to know them. You love them. They must feel loved. They must feel like you are on their side. Otherwise, they're not going to buy into you. That's either as a parent or as a teacher. So it's so important. It's so important for people to understand this. But that sense of duty, so we have duties to all sorts of things and people. We have a duty to our profession, to whatever job we do, to turn up on time every day, to be professional, to do it well. We have a duty to our partners, our husbands, our wives, our mothers, our fathers, our brothers and sisters, and our children, and those duties are all different depending on who we're referring to.
A book, The Game, and that was about communities of men that honed psychological skills in order to pick up women. I, at that point in my life, was a single man and a right little womanizer, and I remember thinking, this ain't right, but oh well, it is money and it is a movie, so I'll probably do it. But the culture at that point didn't have a problem with it. Now the culture is reframing picking up women, which has always been pretty much a primary goal for young men. Let me know in the comments and chat if you've noticed that young men are interested in young women. Is that disgusting? Is that a crime? Is that a problem? Not if it's conducted respectfully, lovingly and consensually. Do you know of any books or theologies or philosophies that tell you how you should handle sex and sexuality? The Bible, it tells you that sex is such a powerful force that it can only really be contained within a marriage to ensure that women don't end up bringing up children on their own, and that men don't end up going around impregnating people and using sexual power as a form of sort of domination over people. There's so much information available to you, and the information that's getting cut versus the information that gets amplified is significant. Probably this show Adolescent is well made, and it's got, certainly in Stephen Graham, it's got a brilliant actor in it for sure, and it probably captures a lot of themes, archetypes and ideas that are significant and important, but the way it gets used and manipulated by power subsequent to its release and construction is what's important here. Why do you think the British government would be interested in emphasising the whiteness of the child, the class of the child, the fact that it's to do with involuntary celibacy and Andrew Tate, rather than it to do with, I don't know, poverty? and lack of education, lack of good male models, lack of understanding of what you're supposed to be when you are a man. Why would it focus on A rather than B? Because A enables them to control and B would diminish their control. If we don't learn to discern, they will continue to control us.
And you catch it? Well, we can't say it. It seems like the Third Reich was potentially the closest. Like,
Yeah.
even the pharmakia that they had access to, like I'm sure you've read about Taboon, which is the chemical nerve agent that they had, that somehow they just never used it. They had so many different opportunities. And so that had to have been fed from. Got it. Okay. Can you connect Enoch the Evil from the offspring of Cain, the seven sciences, through the mystery schools to Freemasonry, Skull of Bones, Illuminati, like all of these New Age, I would imagine, is a derivative of some of these seven sciences in these groups.
So there's a term called Hermes Trismegistus.
Mm-hmm. The record keeper?
Yeah, the 3 times Hermes, thrice Hermes. Anything to do with Rosicrucian and secret societies. Hermes and Hermeticism is a very popular term. So Hermes with the Trismegistus is a conflation or a merging of 3 individuals into a mythos. It's a mythology that is with you for every generation. It continues. And so in this mythos, you have either 1 before the flood or 2 before the flood, or 1 before the flood and 2 after the flood. And so typically it's probably better understood as 2 before the flood and 1 after the flood. 1 is a fallen angel or raised to be a fallen angel. And the other one would be Enoch, son of Cain. Yeah, so Enoch is equated with Mercury and Hermes and other names of similar fashions in the polytheist world. And then there's 1 after the flood, typically from a secret society and out of the Polychronicon of the ancient Masons versus Freemasonry. Freemasonry has these legends that in history that they keep out of the Polychronicon and in the histories of Freemasonry. Hermes, as he's called in there, is called Harmine, who finds the 7 pillars of Lamech and or Enoch from before the flood that has all of the knowledge and the religion.
So there were these things written on tablets that were preserved before the flood so that people could find it after the flood. The person after the flood found these.
Harmine. And then he takes that knowledge to Nimrod at Babel. Now, what's interesting about these 2 pillars, to sort of lend some sort of additional important information on fire and water destruction, which was about to happen, and the flood comes to prevent the fire destruction, is these 2 pillars. One is designed to survive a flood and float, and the other one is designed to survive a fire apocalypse, because they don't know which one's coming. Yeah. And so Hermes finds this, and he takes this knowledge back to Nimrod. And so when we look at Hermes after the flood, that's one of them. The water that's talked about in 2 Peter 3 that was destroyed by fire and perished, and in the flood, the whole earth didn't perish. But if you had a war of angelic technology that destroyed the earth down to its foundations, then you would have to renew the earth, as Psalms 104 says, when God sends His Spirit, which you have the Holy Spirit over the chaos in Genesis 1:2, where you could translate that as the world was void and formless. And those 2 words, tuho and buhu, basically reflect destruction in terms of applying that destruction, and that God doesn't create anything in vain in Isaiah 45, which is tuhu as well, meaning the same thing. He creates everything to be lived with, that the earth becomes destroyed, that this is the angelic technology that was used in the rebellion to destroy that, and now you have a regeneration or a renewal of the earth, as Psalms 104 talks about. And so nothing is new under the sun. Destruction by fire And now possibly and likely, my speculation, likely you have the technology there before the flood to destroy the world by fire. Thus comes the flood.
Hey, almost because God's like saying, like, you're not going to do this again.
Yeah, you're
We're
not
gonna
going to do
wipe
this
out.
again.